so that we give everyone the opportunity to join.
All right, might start just with the intro. So, hello everyone, welcome to today's Ask an Expert webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We're definitely really looking forward to getting stuck into this session that Mark and Kelly have prepared for you all. So focusing around things user adoption within your organisation, no matter the maturity of your users. So just before we begin, as always, just some small housekeeping notes. If you could please remain on mute throughout the presentation, that would be great. However, if you do have a question anytime throughout, please feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to see your engagement, or if you prefer, just pop it through the chat and we'll make sure we monitor that and get back to you. I'll now pass you on to Mark and Kelly, who will take you through what's trending and some best practices for user adoption. Take it away, guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Alice. Hello, lovely people. Thank you for attending. Today is a super interesting topic, which is always one of the sticking points when we think about project portfolio management solutions. How can we ensure that we have a 100% user adoption rate? The reason why I say that is in the past, it has always been the case that it took a little while until everybody is on board. Today, over the next hour, we would like to get some conversation going with you guys as well, based on your experience. And of course, we have our subject matter expert here as well, which is Kelly, part of our team, ensuring that that we always execute a 100% user adoption strategy. Can we just make sure that thank you. Lovely. All right. Now, before we start with the session, we have a couple of different surveys that we want to run, just so that we gain a little bit of insights of what your experience has been with that so-called love-hate relationship between a project management system as well as between the users. So one of our first questions that we would like you to answer is, why do you think user adoption in the PPM space is so difficult today? Is it because PM tools are too complex? Is it because individual users don't get the value out of a solution? Is it because they often have the feeling just to simply report up and therefore don't see the value for them personally? Maybe project managers have their own project management tool, and we see that all too often. Maybe you say, well, I don't really know, and that's the reason why I'm here. So if you could please make your vote on the screen. You should see the form and submit that. Awesome. So we've got 20 votes so far, which is great. There are two close runners. Obviously, individual users don't get the value out of it. Is actually one of the main reasons that we see that user adoption journey being difficult as well. Coming close to, PPM tools are too complex. And if you think about PPM tools, really, it is the digitalization of the way we want to run projects within an organization. So yeah, thank you very much for your votes here, and we'll just continue with our journey. And really what I wanted to do is just simply look a little bit into the history of how project portfolio management solutions and capabilities have actually been implemented. In order for us to do that, we've got another beautiful survey that you can fill in. So what type of users do you think currently manage your project? Is it only professional project managers? Or does that also include accidental project managers, so users that just need to get the job done? Or is it maybe even anyone in an organization that just needs to get the job done? If you could outline that, that would be awesome. Again, when we look at the results, right now, and anyone that needs to get the job done is a first lead here, and we can see that. And accidental project managers, I like to call them citizen project managers, because let's face it, we are all project managers of some sort, whether we are at home or at work. That is exactly the reason why why we include those kinds of users into that journey. So interestingly enough, we do recognize nowadays in our industry that that everybody really needs to do projects of some sort. When I think about the past and the way that we used to implement project management maturity, really was, of course, in the first instance, was, we want to be in a position to have every project management capability on the same level, and really started to create a project management maturity roadmap where we tried to bring all users that are in an organization, try to bring them up to that certain project management level over time. However, as we know that there were some challenges with that, and that's actually the reason why we are here today, to see how we can overcome them. For example, as we know, not all projects are managed by professional project managers, but actually the vast majority are citizen project managers who manage that. Of course, that entails that there are different levels of a project management maturity. And I think in the past that was not so much recognized. That's why I call that process before people. We wanted to make sure that we follow a particular process, and therefore brought people on board to follow that process, which sometimes can be quite complicated. Nowadays, we also have, of course, a whole bunch of different methodologies. I remember starting this 20 years ago, where an organization essentially said, well, we have a PMBOK or we have a Prince2 methodology, and no matter what, we are going to push those projects through that kind of process. Well, with Agile coming on board and with more and more software development and digitalization, Agile really is sort of that new kid on the block that ensures that organizations have the ability to manage their projects no matter what kind of methodology you have, because ultimately a methodology is a step-by-step instruction on how we want to reach the end goal of a particular project. And as we've seen also in the survey, that became very clear that PPM tools they are really good, whether these are the Primaveras of the world or the Project Onlines of the world. They are made for predominantly project managers, and other citizen project managers often just had the feeling that they had to feed the beast so that they could report up on a program and portfolio level. So therefore, it becomes more and more apparent in our industry that we actually need to provide teams with easy to use tools and intuitive tools that are appropriate for the right level of projects. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we're talking about the sort of digitalization of it. Now, fact is that our industry today will always have organizations of different levels and departments of different levels of project management maturity. And that's purely because they are not there to run projects. They are often there to get work done. And as part of their work, they may need to manage projects in their own right. Sometimes that is enough to just simply have a list of tasks. Sometimes it's enough to have a Kanban board or drag and drop capability. And we know that there are lots and lots of solutions out there that enable us to do exactly that. Most organizations actually start with Excel, which is still probably the most widely used project management pseudo tool that is out there. So the industry today really moves from process before people to people before process, giving them the tool that they need in order to manage projects, but at the same time ensuring that processes are embedded into those tools that are so intuitive that that projects can actually be managed in a consistent manner. Now, tools is only one area of that. Obviously, the people part is a very important component of user adoption. That's why it's called user adoption. And with that, we have, ultimately discovered that there are three main components that are important in order to provide the way to improve the work that you do in an organization. On one hand, of course, your people, ensuring that they have that 100% user adoption story. On the other hand, a consistent process that is well understood and hopefully embedded into the digital solution as much as we can and as deeply, so that the end user doesn't really know that they follow that end process, or that end process is at least outlined so clear that they can just simply follow that bouncing ball. Today we want to talk about all three of those areas, and as the first part, we would like to cover the people component, which I think is actually the biggest part of this particular Ask the Expert session. And with that, I'm going to introduce Kelly from our team. Kelly, it's lovely to have you on board for that session today. I know that you are our subject matter expert, ensuring that we as Sensei actually outline a 100% user adoption journey. Tell me, what do you think are the main reasons, why organizations lack that user adoption?
It was really interesting to see with the poll, the fact that individual users don't get the value of the system. So quite literally, it's an interesting proposition that the way historically this was, undertaken was, hey, we're going to take a bunch of users and we're going to train them. And it was like a task item in a project. User adoption is a continual process, and that needs to be understood first and foremost. If we're treating it as a task, it's not a one and done phenomena, as I like to say. Adoption is never complete. There's also the aspect of change management. Again, this is not a task item or a phase within a project. It is continual. We need to be sustaining our business users through ongoing adoption. And the other aspect I really like to pinpoint here is business users shouldn't have their work disrupted to attend formal training. They don't like this. Real training provision needs to be precise with regards to an awareness of who your business user audience is.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because if you think about it, in the past, when we, when solutions and capabilities were deployed, we provided the type of training and then sort of expected that the user just becomes a subject matter expert after the training. But really, training doesn't make, excuse me, training doesn't make us an expert. It makes us a novice. To then apply what we've learned ultimately makes us the expert. Otherwise, we would have people coming out of university and become executives straight away.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
I'm not so sure. From an audience perspective, maybe you can provide us some feedback. What is your experience? Why do you think in your organization is why there may be a lack of user adoption when it comes to project management? Is there any feedback from the audience? Don't be shy. Well, I'm sure that will come. And if you, yeah, please.
I'll quickly jump in here. One of the things I've found is it's always a question of what is it in for me? Like, what do I get out of putting something in?
Emotional buy-in, absolutely.
Makes a lot of sense, and ultimately, if you run a machine, you want to have something out of it. If you need to feed a beast of project solutions for no apparent value for yourself, of course, people have that love-hate relationships. Another couple of comments here is, Douglas quite clearly, lack of project management understanding in general. That's a very good point, because project management is really nothing else but managing work to a certain degree. It has a start and a finish, and it has a whole bunch of things that I need to do in order to get an outcome. We do this on a daily basis. And as Simon here outlined as well, executives do often not see that value. We had a wonderful conversation. I'm part of the PMO Global Alliance, and we had that conversation as well, where executives, when they run an MBA, and I know I did that with my MBA, they have very clearly defined, marketing, sales, finance, operations. But when it comes to project management, really the ability for me to execute our strategy, that has only ever been a side product. And yes, I agree. Executive managers, we have seen that, dissolve PMOs or create PMOs based on their preferences, which is interesting. And yes, Benjamin outlined a very interesting part here, fear of transparency. Hey, as project managers, I can see that we always like to be stars. We like to have a little bit of contingency in one pocket, and a little bit of mitigation in the other pocket, and then at the end bring that all to shine. The fear of transparency and therefore also the fear of being told off is a very big component. We try to outline that in organizational workshops where we say, well, the transparency allows us really to steer the ship into the right direction early without hitting the iceberg, really. And yes, Steve, also, yeah, it takes too long to execute projects. I think that's why Agile becomes very important in that skew, because Agile provides value early, unlike traditional project management, where you have a long design and planning phase before you go into that execution phase. That's a good point. Yeah.
Mark, what I meant by that one was actually the feeling that it takes too much time during my week to do all the input and reporting and that sort of thing. So it's not seen as a value.
Yeah, I hear you. So really the administration of projects, and quite often the double handle of that information, or even finding data like, I need to know what my actuals of the projects are. I have to call the finance department in order to find that out. Yeah, I hear that loud and clear. A lot of project managers are actually project administrators and not project managers. And yes, we hear that quite often too. Yeah, thank you. One of our groups are struggling with letting go of their old execution tool. Yes. And hey, if this old execution tool works, by all means, why wouldn't they? We are all creature of habits, so therefore it does make sense to hold on to what we know. Value of program versus current schedule. Yeah, that is also an interesting one, Steve. Making sure that a project is not just a project in their own right, but forming part of a bigger picture, which often is a program and portfolio. And literally, portfolios and programs form part of that picture of executing strategic goals for an organization. So really understanding that component of where do I fit with my project into the bigger scheme of things. When I ask project managers, why do you do this project? Quite often I was told, well, because they told me to. Instead of saying, well, actually, this forms part of accomplishing our strategic goal A or strategic goal B. So great to have that kind of, and yeah, I can see there are lots of different feedbacks. Often the people and business end up having to work around constraints in the PPM tool rather than the PPM tool being adopted in sync with the business processes. Oh man, this is just so true, Matthew. Where we suddenly have a tool that may not be able to do something that maps 100% to the business processes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So it is a whole reign of different parts, but really the key takeaway there is making sure that on one hand, business process is clear and easy to understand. Lack of time when it comes to administration, or reducing the administrative time by providing digitalization through the new capabilities of the wonderful world of cloud, and really making sure that users utilize the tools of their choice and incorporating that. Yeah, and here another couple of other ones. They feel that they're already busy doing the work instead of also administering, goes hand in hand. And here again, Roy, you're right. I don't want to say, a fish rots from its head, but executive buy-in is super key. And ultimately, is one of these other cogs that I, as an executive, have standing at the helm, ensuring that I go into the right direction. So Kelly, well, it resonates clearly.
It certainly does.
We see this all the time. Now, you spoke about the concept of training and that we always expected that training sort of made you an expert. What type of training do you think is still important for us to conduct in order to ensure that we have that 100% user adoption?
Absolutely. So, obviously from our perspective, we like to utilize our blended learning framework. And with that, we're providing, that aspect of having instructor-led, sessions where we're getting those face-to-face training sessions, but we're also having collaborative learning. We're also combining self-directed learning. And this, I touched on this before and just seeing some of the comments come through at the moment. I mentioned emotional buy-in. When people are participating in training, they can start to see the practicality or the practical benefits for them as an end user. And that is not restricted to, hey, I'm a project manager. It could also be for an executive. Now, when we look at that, when we get that emotional buy-in, we also forge trust within the organization or the company that allows us to have that awareness that the organization is heading in the right direction with a solution.
I couldn't agree more. The combination of different areas of making that not just that one training block, but the consistent knowledge transfer of experience. Correct. Is really key here, which sort of answers in many ways, what comes after training. Yeah, it's not just training.
It's not stop-start.
Yeah, exactly. It's not stop-start. Yeah.
It's continual.
Well, it would be interesting to see from your point of view, how do we ensure that user adoption stays on today? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more around the path that we take so that we can provide that knowledge transfer, and also maybe talk a little bit more about what we refer to as that blended learning experience.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic, Mark. If I could actually get you to direct to a slide that I've got presented for everyone, and this outlines our 100% user adoption journey. And there are 4 key components as we move across this. And you can see from this slide, we've got shared commitment, the blended learning experience that I was stressing on before, but then intrinsically following on from that, ongoing adoption support and business value realization. Now, at the very beginning of this journey, what we are having those conversations with our clients on is surrounding any business scenarios. What challenges have you got? And let's also talk about keeping the end in mind. What are your desired results? What is going to be the determination of client success? We also, of course, come across the learner needs analysis, so we get an awareness of your business users. And of course, very, very important, Mark, I'm a huge one on this one, the end-to-end testing. Very important that we have confidence that we can impart to the business users themselves.
Now, Kelly, when you talk about the learner needs analysis, can you just elaborate a little bit more around what we're doing in that? Because I think this is where the different levels of user needs is really identified. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I think, we need to be aware of how what the learner's role is in the organization, what they're going to be utilizing the platform for. The other component, and we do this through a variety of diagnostic tools, is what is their current awareness of project management. Again, I noticed in the commentary, this lack of understanding what project management is. And we've been talking about the citizen project manager or the occasional project manager as well in that story, and understanding where their touch points are. So we come through, we get up that awareness, we understand their knowledge base. We also determine how they learn. And this is really important, and how they want to be supported. And this is very, very much core to how we then come through and we deliver upon that blended learning experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that continuous feedback loop from the end user, is super vital, because if we don't hear their challenges, well, we can never resolve them.
Exactly. And, we've got to be continually checking back on those challenges and looking at the metrics that we've determined for success and see how we can continually improve upon that experience for our business users. User adoption is ongoing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder whether there is some kind of, general checklists that you guys go through.
Oh, straight there. Great. Thanks, Mark. And of course, if I can get you to just come across, and I think this gives everyone a little bit more awareness of what we actually do as part of our client success checklist. This is formulated into 2 different sections. We look at the change management strategy, key again. And again, please remember what I said earlier. It shouldn't be a task activity on a project schedule. It's more involved than that. So, of course, from the change management strategy, we want to ascertain, looking at aspects of, who's driving this. I noticed in the comments, it's not being backed by the leadership. This is one of the huge issues. Yeah. We need to ensure that we have got the sponsors who are driving and influencing the change and, of course, the user adoption.
Not even to mention that from an executive, that's one thing, but an organization has so many different departments. And one of the comments here says, organizational siloing. One
Correct.
department doesn't know what the other department does. And of course, when I'm in department A, my work is the most important work, right? Again, seeing that bigger picture there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, this is where we come in through, and you can see here where we're identifying stakeholders, champions. I love champions. And when we talk about that too, Mark, one of the cool things is when we talk about that silo effect, when we bring champions into the organization and we unite this group, that open communication, we start to break down the silos, because all of a sudden these different areas of the business start to get an awareness of each other and an empathy towards each other, which is super cool.
Kelly, and the analogy that I like to use there is, moving an organization from a machine into an organism, really
Correct.
trying to combine the collaboration capabilities, breaking those silos away. And suddenly, if you know what the other department goes through, you can actually also see how you can potentially help. Hey, just so that I said it, team, the slide decks, including checklists, will actually be sent out to you after the session, so you don't have to frantically write or do some screenshots. That will be delivered to you, of course.
Absolutely. And look, I just want to quickly touch, obviously you'll be sent this through, so you'll be able to have a review of these different checklist items that we do have. But of course, on the other side of the pane, we've got the strong ongoing adoption support. So again, we want to talk about creating and adjusting our messaging. Again, it's fluid. We're not a static kit. I noticed there was a pre-question to the webinar today. Do you have pre-kits of communications, etc.? No, we have a platform that we build upon, but each organization is going to be unique. These messaging, these aspects of communications that we have with our business users are always fluid, are always in movement, are always responding. So again, as we move through the adoption support component, we need to be coming through these checklist items, and this is what drives a successful, ongoing and continual user adoption to 100%.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just, one size fits all,
No.
One block of tick, yes, training done, and we think the whole world knows everything. If that would be the case, the wonderful world would be much easier. But yes, the ongoing adoption also makes sure that there is actually an increase of maturity over time, because it is just so deeply embedded in the organization, right?
Absolutely. And look, I guess from that perspective, Mark, if we could actually, come through and just, kind of, if we can go to the next slide for a moment, thank you. If we talk about our blended learning experience, we need to be aware that, right at the beginning of the journey, of the user adoption journey, we're gathering what are those success points, what are the metrics we're going to be following. So as we come into our own blended learning experience. And I can see from the participants, we've got some of our clients in the session today. We utilize what we call the blended learning experience, but we also use episode training. So this episode training can be formulated and structured with instructor-led training, of course, and virtual, massive with what we're experiencing, may I say, in unprecedented times at present. And then we come into the collaborative learning. This is where people like me, we step back. We've given you some information, but now we want you to come together, partner up with, your colleagues and work through the information, work through the how-tos, get the practical hands-on, and actually provide, for instance, teachbacks as to how you've actually come through into those different scenarios and how practical it is into your own real-world scenarios.
Yeah.
So as we come through this, I'd like to identify to everyone, and of course, again, this will be part of the handout, we need to always be addressing the 5 moments of need. And of course, this is new, so learning the solution for the first time, more, I want to learn more about the solution. We always want to encourage that. 3, to apply, remembering and applying it in your own situation. And again,
real world scenarios.
Yeah, real world scenarios. And we always work with real world scenarios because that's what we're mapping at the very beginning as well. We want to identify your challenges, how you do things. And then, of course, we want to solve. What are your issues? What are your problems as they arise? We don't want to say, hey, we'll deliver training on that 3 minutes down the track and we'll bring you all together. No, we want to do it as it arises. And of course, ultimately, guys, change, adopting change in skills, habits, and ways. Please remember what I was saying previously, that emotional buy-in. If business users can see the practical advantages, this is where we get emotional buy-in, and this is where we go from a group of champions to a whole organization being champions in a digital solution.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Look, to the point that I think, especially in that, initial adapting the change in skills, quite often the previous parts that you have here, new and introduction and wanting to learn more of a solution, that time is often not given, and therefore people and citizen project managers, they're just, they open up what they use, and in that instance, it's quite often Excel. Say, well, I just need to start with a task list, and then I need to somehow communicate that. Instead of stepping that step back and seeing how we can actually ensure that on one hand we give the users enough time so that they can learn that new capability, and on the other hand, of course, making sure that we actually provide them with the right tool set so that they feel comfortable and don't need to have a doctor title in order to run a PPM solution.
Correct. And that's precisely it. And, I keep coming back to that, in time, real time learning component. Very, very important. I'd like to actually reach out to our audience right now, Mark, and see if anyone's got any questions about some of the things and some of the conversations that you and I have been having over this.
I hope that resonates with
I'm hoping.
users, yeah. And I wonder who actually does that in their environment. If you would look at it, I would probably classify it as, well, we don't have any training. We just let the guys or let the team try to use it. And then on the other hand, we may have an initial training, but then it's up to us. I wonder who actually has in their organization that ongoing capability of sharing their experience and improving.
Yeah, I'd be really interested if that is applicable to anyone in our audience.
Yeah, Mark and Kelly, it's Steve from Goldfields. We're introducing the process. How you going, Kelly?
Hey, Steve, how are you going?
Good. And we just had this week we had a 4-hour session with Kelly, online with Kelly with new project managers. So the follow-up we use is that we book another 2 hours one-on-one with each person, have live projects, and actually go through the actual learning and doing.
Yeah,
revisit learning and then actually start doing it straight away.
What better way to learn than applying it straight away to a world scenario? Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else?
Right. No. Yeah, I'm also conscious of time.
I am too. So, Mark,
we are halfway through.
Yeah, might hand back to you.
Yeah,
and of course,
awesome.
just reminding everyone, we will be sharing this content with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. And look,
Thanks,
the human component really is the biggest part.
Yes.
Trying to apply different areas and different ways of how we continuously learn and improve and gain more experience is really key here. Which is, oops, yeah, I'll do that here. Let's do that here, which is great. So thanks, Kelly. The people component, super important, most important actually in that 100% user adoption story. But when we're thinking about PM solutions or PPM solutions, well, ultimately, the purpose of a solution is to make life easier, not more complicated. The end user quite often experiences this differently because on one hand, and we've seen that on some of the feedback, on one hand, the software solution may not be quite as flexible to apply 100% business processes to the solution, which this is where that process component comes in. And on the other hand, well, there are just so many different solutions for us to utilize when it comes to executing a project. We want to ensure that we just revisit that a little bit and see how we could, from a technology perspective, actually resolve that. So before we do that, one certainty is clear. No matter what level you are, you do need to conduct work. And based on that work, we also know that there's a whole bunch of different tools. I wonder what kind of tools you guys are currently use. Would you be able to fill in the form as a conversation starter to see what kind of tools you currently use? And yeah, I am not surprised. Okay, it's coming in. It's coming in big times. I'm not surprised that Project Online is still on the forefront. I would think that a lot of the audience here are either existing customers or users of a larger organization that started to go down the tool path. So at the same time, we can see that obviously a multitude of different tools is quite prominent in combination with mainly Excel, of course. And some of you even use other cloud tools. There are, the Monday.coms and the Asanas. These are all great tools, right? They are for what they need to do. They are exactly right. Now, in our world, and this is really predominantly the Microsoft world, there are so many execution tools that we see today. And I just want to outline a couple of them so that we know what that actually means when we talk about digitalization of business processes. Now, before I go into a couple of demonstration, I just wanted to outline how in the Microsoft world, how this is actually done these days. Microsoft provides a multitude of tools, no-code, low-code capability tools. That means I, as a business user, have the ability to utilize this tool in an, I'm going to call it in an Excel-like manner, where I can drag and drop or create content and may even have some formulas that I have in order to do some more complex calculations. So when it comes to the digital enabler, really Microsoft provides you the ability to automate your business process flow with approval processes and notification through a tool called Power Automate. So this is part of that Power family in Office 365. And for all of you Office 365 users out there, you do have that tool available today. If you don't know that you have that, please talk to your IT department, because these are really the enablers. What I would like to focus on right now is sort of the different execution tools. As we've seen earlier, we've got the Project Online users, we've got the Jira users, we've got the DevOps users, the Monday.com users, the Project for the Web users. So there's a whole, and Excel users for that matter, but be rest assured, Excel is not a schedule tool. There are a whole bunch of different schedules, and if we provide the right schedule capability for the type of project and for the type of users, then you will see that the user adoption from a digital enablers perspective is actually there. Of course, the reason why we maintain information is to provide powerful reporting and dashboarding, providing the ability to make that objective decisions. And Microsoft has what they refer to as Power BI. I'm sure some or most of you are utilizing that. Not to mention that this is all in your Office 365 environment today. You have, Teams. This is the wonderful tool that we are using right now to communicate here. We've got SharePoint, we've got Outlook, we've got a whole bunch of different Office products that we use in Office 365. Well, and from a user experience, really, we have the ability these days to literally drag and drop our own online application together so that we can actually capture the information. Not to mention that we heard earlier, as a project manager, I need to spend too much time trying to get information. Well, with integration that Microsoft provides you in the Power Family, you have out-of-the-box integration with your line of business systems, like your finance system, so that you get the actual information, that you don't have to call, an accountant and say, hey, is the data ready? Can I see my report of how much money I've spent? All of that combined is really what the Microsoft Cloud provides you with. Now let's think about that more in the context of these execution tools. So what I do is I'm just going to outline different execution tools that are used today. I will focus predominantly in the Microsoft space, but we'll also want to introduce some new tools that are really good in the Agile and in the Kanban board. We see that quite often in marketing departments, where they just simply have things like the browser and have things like Trello, or in the Microsoft world, Planner. So a planner is nothing else, but for me here, I'm in my Office 365 environment. I have my planner available, and this is now my planner I have with all of the different project plans that are assigned to me. And then I can literally drill into an existing plan and have a list of all of my tasks that haven't been started, that are in progress, or that are completed. And I can just simply drag and drop them. This is what we refer to as a board, or as a Kanban board in the Agile world. And there's a whole ways of how you can structure them. For example, by bucket. In that instance, hey, what do I need to do next? I need to make sure that that I'm going to do this one here next, and then this should be forming part of my sprint 1, sprint 2. So you literally have the ability to structure your information with filters by utilizing your Kanban board. And the usability of that tool is super straightforward. You can add a new task, just simply add that to it, and I'm just going to open up an existing task. You then have the ability, as part of that task, to determine the progress and the priority, and just some notes and maybe some checklists, some attachments. So it really allows you to collaborate with your team together from a planner perspective. So that's one of these execution tools that Microsoft provides. The counterpart to that is Trello, for those people who have seen that, or even the Monday.com or the Asanas, where really task management is on the forefront, more so than a detailed schedule. That being said, when I think about detailed scheduling, as a citizen project manager, I have the ability to use a tool in Microsoft that's called Project for the Web. This is essentially the new kid on the block, where I, as a citizen project manager, can just simply create a list of to-dos, can even structure them with phases, just like we used to do that in Project. And that grid view can also then be viewed as a board, just like Planner does that as well. More and more organizations actually have the ability to do that. Sorry, I have to log on here again. Thank you very much. And the Kanban approach these days for especially lightweight projects is actually a very common part. No, come on. The nice thing about the project for the web capability, it is not just a Kanban board as we've seen in Planner like Trello has, but you can actually create your timeline, or in the past we called it a Gantt chart view, and this is all available on the web, of course, where you can literally, drag and drop your dependencies. This is actually very important to determine your timeline, and of course you have the ability to then assign your resources and assign the amount of effort that may be required in order to complete this particular task. So the concept here that Microsoft outlined is really the citizen project manager, the ease of use when it comes to creating your own to-do list and your own schedule. Well, and then of course for the professional project managers, we have the good old-fashioned project schedule. That is really for projects that require a rigorous schedule capability in order to determine when a particular project is completed. You may need to do a baseline comparison. You may need to do a critical path comparison. You may want to assign individual resources with different assignment levels to a project, and that's really where MS Project hits in. The alternative of those are the Primaveras of the tool of the worlds. So these are really for professional project managers in the project online space. That's currently really the only way that you can schedule. Hence the reason why citizen project managers feel quite often overwhelmed with that. Well, and then of course you have the Jiras of the world again, where the focus is around agility, ensuring that we have a collaboration capability on the board. Jira is a great these days cloud-based tool that a lot of IT departments use to manage their issues and risks and also their tasks, of course, where you literally again have that concept of dragging and dropping, where you see the amount of progress. You can open that up and you can actually customize it to your own need very much. These are the tools that we see quite often in IT in particular, or even in the marketing world or operational world, where it is not so important to determine exactly the amount of timeline and the assignment for a resource, but that we just get the stuff done. Well, and then there are organizations that use these multiple tools, and I'm sure if you go into your own organization, you will see that these are all of the types of tools that different silos of departments currently use, and even individual users. We have seen that contract project managers come into an organization and actually manage their projects on their own account in Monday.com or in Trello because of the ease of use. So the important part here is in order to provide 100% user adoption, you need to ensure that the end user, the citizen project manager or the accidental project manager or professional project manager, has the tool that it is worth their while, that they know that they have a nice and easy way of managing that. Now, one of the biggest issues that we then, of course, see from here is the ability to consolidate all of these different tools together. And, it was mentioned before, well, now I need to manually bring all of that together. This is very time consuming, high administration, not to mention human errors, and the consolidation of these reports may only happen once a month instead of having a real-time view. Well, this is actually where you will see that tools that Microsoft provide you already in their Office 365 environment actually have the ability to bring that seamlessly together. So an example that I want to show you here is nothing else but a Power BI report, so a dashboard that brings all of the information together and ensures that all of the different execution tools are actually seamlessly incorporated into their project management solution. That means that when I, for example, open a project, let's just open this one here for the sake of it. When I open this project, on one hand, I have the ability as a project manager to utilize my execution tool as I like to have that. In that instance, I've linked my project for the web tool to that. I have my business process that is so deeply embedded into the digital solution here, which, by the way, is Power Apps. It literally is a no-code, low-code capability where you can start with a fresh with a fresh empty app, and you can drag and drop all of these information sorts together, and then you manage that. Now, in this particular instance, I have a minor project, and we want to make sure that no matter whether you use Project for the Web, or whether you use Primavera, or whether you use Jira, or whether you use Planner, the artifacts of a project still need to be consistent, and you will find that some of these execution tools do not allow you to manage things like risks and issues. So what the Power App family allows you to do in the digital world is literally to apply an online form for a user and embed the business process and literally map 100% of your business process to the technology, so that when I need to create a new project, in that instance a new risk, I don't need to know how risk matrices are calculated. All I need to know is that I need to fill in the information. We unify information. For example, the risk matrices are often managed with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and no one really knows what that means. Here we literally unify the technology or the process so that it's easy understood, and I then just simply save and close the information. That will now calculate not only my risk metrics automatically, it will calculate my project metrics, my program, and my portfolio risk metrics as well. And I think this is where this automation and optimization of business processes happen, to the point that, you know, you can actually then tell a project manager, don't think about it to go to all of the different areas in order to create your project status update. You actually then in Power Apps have the ability to bring this all together, so that a citizen project manager literally has all of the information together, and all they need to do is then to provide a little bit of textual context in regards to these different areas that we want to manage in the projects. So the key message here really is make sure that processes from a digitalization perspective, that processes are so deeply embedded that the user just simply understand that it is very intuitive, that you have the ability to only outline the information at a time when I really need it. In that instance, my planning, if I would go into the execution, I may have additional content like finance that I want to then manage. So you do have the ability to provide that through Microsoft's no-code, low-code capability. And of course, bringing it all together, not only from a project perspective. So I, as a PMO, have an overarching view across all of my projects here. But of course, ultimately, because we have that information captured in your Office 365 environment, you then, of course, can run consolidated reports, let's say portfolio reports, for example, that will automatically update itself based on the information that is provided by the project manager. So if I go into a particular portfolio and I drill into that again, all that this is it is Power BI, Microsoft Power BI. That's it. It is literally a drag and drop capability where I now have as part of my portfolio status, have all of my projects that have been updated. And because of that capability, I can easily consolidate that, and I can see what my total budget is, what my total variance is. Remember the risks here is now I can see that my portfolio is a high risk portfolio because of all of the risk items that I manage. As a citizen project manager, I don't need to know that. I don't need to worry about whether this is going to be consolidated. I just simply make sure that I fill in and maintain the information once, make this of high quality, and then the rest, a digital solution these days should be able to do exactly that. Now, I just wanted to quickly outline that. I don't want to make this too much of a digital play. The idea really is provide the users, no matter where they are in the scheme of your projects, provide them with the tools that they feel comfortable with. And if you interrogate your own company, you will find that there are actually a multitude of different execution tools, task management tools, schedule tools that are available. With all of that being said, oh, sorry, we already went through this one here. With all of that being said, I want to just reiterate, in order for us to provide a 100% user adoption, we need to make sure that the blended learning experience, as we call that, forms part of that strategy. We need to make sure that processes are so deeply embedded that people can actually either easily follow them or don't know that they follow them at all. That's actually the most intuitive way. And you need to make sure that you provide them with the ability to utilize the tool of their choice, but at the same time ensure that the information that is captured is enterprise worthy, things like risks, issues, etc., where there is a certain standard that we need to uphold, that this is actually then comprised in that digital solution platform. With all of that being said, I'm conscious of time. I've got another 5 minutes before we are running out of time. Now, again, just to revisit the key takeaways, training doesn't make you an expert, it makes you a novice. Applying what you learned makes you an expert. Reinforce the user adoption journey throughout blended learning. So don't just finish at the go live environment or once we onboard someone, give them the opportunity to continuously learn in their environment and share that knowledge as well. Embed your processes into a digital platform, and nowadays no-code, low-code enables us to do that. And again, listen to the feedback of your end users, because that is the most valuable component that you can outline. And then again, choose the platform that enables the usage of the most appropriate tool for the right job. So I don't expect that that a citizen project manager knows all of the integrities of MS Project, which is a very super cool schedule tool for the professional project manager or the professional scheduler. Now, with all of that being said, I know that there were a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand, and I would also like to open it up for questions. Let me quickly go through the existing questions that we cover. That how to overcome executive group thinking around the prioritization of requirements. Well, that's an interesting one. We will actually capture that at a later stage with the strategic portfolio management. It's really not so much the work management component to it. And really, the thinking about prioritization always needs to be thought, well, I call it the rocks, the pebbles, and the sand. What is the most important concept for an organization to move ahead? And that translates to strategic goals, actually. Best practices to retain users, such as regular communication strategy, what support to offer users. Interesting question. I think one of the most common supports that we see, let me just quickly outline that, is when you create a digital capability, just make sure that you incorporate the training into the digital solution. So again, this is Power Apps here, and we embed the blended learning experience directly into the solution so that I have easy access to it, so that when I'm a project manager, that I can say, hey, how do I do this again? And then have the ability to consume the information in an intuitive fashion so that I have a reminder saying, oh yeah, this is how it's done. And that will actually enforce that kind of best practices. Not to mention, listen to the feedback, have someone at hand that actually goes through that notion with all of the users. What suggestions can you make for a large organization that has a PPM to improve its portfolio cost, resource planning, and management capability? Upmost, I know a large organization is always more complex. Upmost, ensure that these processes are consistent. They don't have to be consistent on the same level, but they need to be consistent in a way of following these processes. I think that is super important. In large organizations, we see it all too often that a big volume of data is maintained, but only very little of this data is actually used for analytical purposes. So what we generally outline is, let's start at the top. Let's see what kind of information needs to be done needs to be retained in order to steer the ship into the right direction, and then work your way on a departmental level up to ensure that you have these right level of information sets, because more information you have to maintain, the longer it will take to administer, and that's one of the main reasons why these user adoptions often fail. I could talk an entire session around this one particular questions, and I think this will actually be one of our Ask the Expert session going forward in the next couple of months. Now, for all of that, are there any questions? I know there was a lot of content when it comes to the user adoption. I want to reiterate that we will provide you the content, including the checklist, so that you can actually start that journey yourself in your own environment and in your own organization. Are there any questions?
There is one in the chat pane.
All right.
So we've actually got a question just can we back up? I've gone all over the place. From Simon. As a rough guess, how much would you budget to allocate towards development and execution of training for a new project deployment?
What do you think, Kelly? Well, you know, it depends, right?
Very ambiguous statement, actually.
It's a very big statement, yeah. Look, honestly, it is not the initial budget. May be setting up the training component, the blended training. That would be the initial cost, I would think. The internal cost is actually the one that you need to consider, making sure that the feedback that you receive from your end users are actually inhaled and potentially used to improve the process, making their life easier. I think, oh, see, there's my stop sign. That is ultimately the question, how much effort is put in to ensure that this user adoption journey is pleasant for everyone. So yeah, listen to that feedback. The initial setup, yes, that's one component of a, potentially a digital subscription where you have these blended learning experience, and you may have those, those short bursts of training, but it's actually, what do you do continuously? That is an ongoing cost that you will have to incorporate. I can't give you a dollar value there. If I would, then I would say $3.95. Who knows?
And I'd say you're wrong.
Fair enough.
Too funny.
Are there any other questions that you may have or feedback? Well, I'm conscious of time. I hope the session was worth your while. The recording will be available as well if you want to inhale some of the conversations that Kelly and I had with you. Please, next steps here is, will be sent out shortly. We will also send out your the content that we've gone through. Connect with us through our project capability and websites and LinkedIn and all of those things. And please provide us with some feedback. Click here to share on your feedback. We always love to hear whether that was worth your while, plus potential other challenges that you may want to cover in those Ask the Expert sessions. With that, thank you very much and have an awesome Friday and a wonderful weekend. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Nice work, Mark.
And Kelly.